So there was great conversation about IP, what it should do, competition, what Americans think about intellectual property, all very important things. But if we're going to educate not just IP leaders, but future leaders about IP, what do we need to tell them? What do they need to know? They need to know something. They don't need to know everything about IP. I'm the poster child because I'm not a lawyer. I don't have a technical degree. I don't have a business degree, but somehow I was able to get it. It's like baseball. You remember the batting averages because you don't have to, just because they're interesting. But this is the next panel is educating leaders about what they need to know, and it's going to be led by Stephanie Couch. Stephanie?
Well, you all have heard of speed dating, so I've been instructed to do speed introductions. We'll see how well I can do at this. So the first person who's going to talk today is Rafael Cardona, who's an adjunct assistant professor of business at Glendale Community College, a semi-retired visionary and bicultural marketing professional with an employment history that spans 25 years. His areas of expertise include account management, business development, media placement, promotions, and operations. He's a philanthropist at heart and is passionate about helping others. Then we will hear from Daryl Lem, who's the H. Laddie Montague Jr. Chair in Law at Penn State Dickinson Law and co-hire at the Institute of Computational and Data Sciences at Penn State University. He also serves as Associate Dean for Research and Innovation and founding director of the Intellectual Property and Innovation Initiative. He helps policymakers, attorneys, corporate counsel, scholars, and the public make sense of the world around them, and is a founding member of the Global IP Alliance and its local chapters in Pennsylvania and Illinois. And I also am pleased to say he's co-chair of the Higher Education Committee of the U.S. Intellectual Property Alliance, and we get to work together there, have lots of fun. Our third speaker is James Gerard Conley, who's an inventor and serves as a faculty member in the Kellogg Center for Research in Technology and Innovation. He also serves as faculty fellow at the Northwestern University Siegel Design Institute, is a charter fellow of the National Academy of Inventors as well. He investigates the strategic use of intangible assets and intellectual properties to build and sustain competitive advantage. And he serves as an expert and author for the UN-based World Intellectual Property Organization and has served as an appointed member of the United States Department of Commerce Trademark Public Advisory Committee to the Patent and Trademark Office. So lots of experience here to benefit from. Thank you so much for joining us at a different distance, James. And then our last speaker, Tiffany Norwood, is the founder of Tibetan. She's the CEO. And Tibetan teaches everyone entrepreneurship and innovation literacy for success in business, school, and life. At age 27, she raised $670 million to fund startups and build the first ever global digital radio platform, launching 3 satellites into space, including XM radio, supporting the development of MP3 and MP4 technologies, and investing in a new generation of digital radio receivers. She did her first startup as a teenager and had a patent by the age of 23. Yes, so impressive. We're really excited to have you as part of this panel. So we're going to go sort of in order. Each person's going to talk for about 5 minutes. And as we think about what it will take to educate the future leaders about IP, I want us to think about this map. So this map comes from Raj Chetty's work that was mentioned earlier. And you're looking at the areas where patenting by commuting zone is heavy. So you can see we do well in the West Coast and in the upper East Coast in the northern areas. You see the white parts. that's where children growing up are probably not going to have regular conversations about patents, and I know we're talking today about more than patents, but when we think about what people know and don't know, and what's the topic of conversation, this does come into play. So what we're trying to do, many of us in this world we call invention education, IP education, we're trying to provide on-ramps or ways for young people to get on the pathway. I've mentioned earlier that the Henry Ford Museum has a national program, the invention conventions, many states host them. This is one of the young women who participated here in California, where we support the program. She invented a device that helps make sure that her crayons will not break. This young inventor, her mother worked 2 jobs, and when she went to put her to bed at night, the mom would fall asleep all the time. So she invented a teddy bear that would rub her tummy so her mom didn't have to, so her mom could sleep. And then when her brother was in the hospital, she had the teddy bear there because they couldn't be there to comfort her brother. So she did this invention in kindergarten and got her patent about 3rd grade. This is one of our middle school inventors here in the Boston area who started out with us just in some of our basic programs that we do after school around. We started out with shoe sole design. Here we have a team from Gary High School in Southern California. One of the girls' grandparents had diabetes. They recognized that taking care of the feet is a problem when you have diabetes. And so they earned our, I think it was the 15th patent that our high school teams have earned for their foot device. And we had a beautiful patent party with Kathy Vidal at their school. Here we have some of our young inventors. You noticed in the map in the Central Valley of California, it's white, meaning there's not a lot happening there. These young inventors are from Modesto Junior College, where I was a graduate, and we have been working with their leadership to put invention education and IP education into play in the college for 3 years now. So they just hosted their first celebration, the community of the students' work, and that's the picture in the corner. We're learning a lot as we're trying to get this type of education into the regular school day. It's very complicated. You think your world's complicated with IP? Let me tell you how the world of school finance and education policy and how you fit this stuff in is also complex. But I am thrilled to meet people who I've only heard about, including Rafael, who's going to start us off here. You actually know a lot about how to fit this into the community college world. So take us away. Tell us your secret sauce and what we need to know to do more of this.
Wonderful. We're great. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this panel. It's an honor and a privilege, and thank you for your time. I am a college instructor, and I am an accidental professor. I started teaching, 12 years ago. I was asked to teach business, and that's what I teach. And I remember my first semester teaching a student coming up to me, and he had designed this beautiful logo. And he asked me, he said, can you show me the ropes? How do I protect this? Because somehow I feel like somebody may steal it. And, with an MBA behind me and the experience of 25 years working in marketing, I really had no clue. I didn't really know where to direct them. So that's sparking me the interest in teaching intellectual property, which I didn't know how to do it, not being a lawyer. But luckily for me, 3 years later, upon this accident, I came across a Michelson Foundation who approached me. And I know the Michelson Foundation is here today, and I'm very grateful to them because they asked me if I was interested in being part of a pilot program that would allow me to integrate IP teachings into my business courses, and I right away agreed. So what I did was to integrate the teachings of Michelson Foundation. And for those of you that may not be familiar with them, they have a series of videotapes that break down the education into chips of 5 minutes, what each individual IP area is. and a book. And so my marketing students have to write a marketing plan as part of the process of passing the course. And I asked them to write the marketing plan, and in addition to also tell me in their invention, their line extension or product extension that they pitched in the marketing plan, what type of IP protection would they seek and how would they go about doing so? And much to my surprise, they came back with an amazing marketing plan that included IP relevant information. And that touched me because I felt that I had done something right. So that led to implementing these materials to my advertising class. And in the advertising class, they write a creative brief. And a creative brief, for those of you that may not know, is a one-pager that basically talks about how to organize an advertising message, whether a TV ad or a radio ad. So there they had the opportunity to learn about how to protect a logo, copy, a slogan, for example. So I feel like I was on the right track at that time. It's been now 7 years since I started teaching IP, and I can tell you 2 stories of 2 students who have come and really touched me with the teachings of IP sponsored by the Michelson Foundation and now the CIPU's website, which is marvelous, and I'm directing my students to use it because it breaks down the education in a way that even I can't believe. So we have Ana Hernandez, who's a 19-year-old student. She's a Hispanic American, and when we talk about multiculturalism and some areas of our demographic not knowing what IP is, she's a prime example of it. She's Hispanic American, first-generation college educated, and she applied for a very prestigious internship to the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center in San Francisco, which they're very selective with. They only select students maybe 2 or 3 per college in California. She was selected to do a marketing internship. She went in, she interviewed, and she called me up and said, they asked me if I knew anything about IP. And she said that she told them that she had because of my class and the teachings. And long and behold, they actually not only did you have her do marketing, but they also started to teach her hands-on what IP was about. And she told me that she has now learned what a patent is, how to read it, how to file it in the United States, how to file it in other countries as well. And that touched my heart. As an educator, I do this really as a passion. It's not really the paycheck. It's my ability to change lives, especially at the community college level with our multicultural students. So now she's on to bigger and greater things, and who knows what this experience may lead her to now that she's got this ability to understand and appreciate the area of business, which is IP, which is highly underestimated. I think when we teach business, we focus on finance and accounting and all the other disciplines, but never IP. The other example is another gentleman who was in my class recently. He's slightly older. He's starting a software company. And he told me that the teachings from the class allowed him to do 2 things. A, to appreciate what to do with his designs. He has designed algorithms that allow him to operate, a specific type of software, but he didn't know that he needed to protect this model. So now he's on his way to hiring attorneys. He's been looking at the CIPU website for resources, and Bruce and I have been talking about what to do next. So those are 2 brief examples I can share with you of people whose lives have been touched by this effort of bringing IP education to the community college setting. What's in the future for me? So many different things. The one thing that comes to my mind right away is to appeal to all of you and to reach out to me if you have any ideas on how our students can get hands-on experience with learning IP. Because teaching the theory is one thing, but getting them to do things like Anna or Andrew in my courses is a whole different game. So that's one thing. And then second and most exciting to me is my marketing class is now going to be offered across the state and across the country to an effort launched by the Chancellor's Office in California. It's an online college where students from anywhere in the world can take my class. And so this gives me the opportunity to propagate the message of IP education of its importance in the world of business. And third, I'm looking for other classes to integrate the teachings into. So I hope that that serves as a testimonial of the great work that you are all doing to encourage us educators to teach IP at the community college level.
Awesome. Thank you. Daryl?
Thanks, Stephanie, and thank you, Bruce, for your leadership in organizing an event like this, but also in bringing it across the country, so folks from all over this country can understand the importance of IP. I'd answer your question in this way, Stephanie, in three parts around the theme of the panel, which is educating future leaders about IP. So when we talk about educating, what exactly are we talking about right now? When we talk about future leaders, who is our target audience right now? And when we talk about IP, why we need to think beyond IP law. So first of all, educating. We think about traditional ways of educating in law schools. We take courses, we have externships at places like the Copyright Claims Board, like law firms, and if you're lucky, maybe at Manny Schachter's place at IBM. And we also have ad hoc, what we call IP awareness exposure. And the USIPA Alliance that Stephanie mentioned, we are having an ambitious goal of reaching out to 1 million students and educating them about IP across the country. Now, at Georgia Tech, where Scott Frank, that's really the driving force behind the USIPA Alliance study, he has created a program where over the course of a year, you have 100 courses, 100 opportunities to touch base with somebody that is talking about IP, whether it's a guest lecture, whether it's a seminar. And so you work that out, that's about twice a week. And across the course of a year, that's a tremendous amount of exposure, and more importantly, an ingraining of a culture and a familiarity and a respect for intellectual property rights. Now, in addition to that, when we talk about future leaders, what are we talking about? Well, here I'm going to mention two examples from Finnegan, not because I'm plugging anything from Finnegan, but because they truly are, right now, the leaders in this space. So future leaders, well, first of all, we talk about future leaders in terms of bringing up minorities, whether in law schools or elsewhere. And Finnegan has a program that is specifically focused on bringing black students from STEM backgrounds into the law, what they call the Finnegan IP Summit. It's a multi-day immersion program that they're doing in partnership with GW Law. GW Law is providing the accommodation, but Finnegan is actually paying for students from across the country to be there, and they will expose them to lectures from Finnegan attorneys. They will expose them to visits to the USPTO and the courts. And so in doing so, again, bring up into the pipeline underrepresented minorities. Now, in addition to that, they have what's called the Finnegan IP University. And this creates a feeder program into an IP career. So it's a free 4-week online program where students from anywhere in the world, not just in the United States, can understand the nuts and bolts of IP and patent prosecution. But not only that, there's a perk for folks that sign up and complete this course. They will get a priority consideration at Finnegan. If they apply for a job there, they will get a certificate of completion, and they will get one-on-one career counseling by someone through Finnegan. So that's the second point. And the third point is about IP. So here I say, why do we need to think beyond IP law? Because let's face it, the world has become more complex, and if we just look at the law, we're not going to be able to give holistic solutions. And what does that mean in terms of education? It means interdisciplinary education. And one example of that just took place this year is at University of Washington, or UW. And a professor there by the name of Peter Nichols has started a new course called Music Law and Policy. It's an interdisciplinary course, and his understanding is sometimes when you deal with issues, now these are not even patent issues, these are copyright issues, but copyright issues can be complicated too, especially when it deals with music. And he comes with a musical background. This course is 2/3 law students and 1/3 music students. And to be enrolled in the course, not only must you do a paper together, you must actually perform music from the cases that you study. So if you are musically inclined, you can do a solo performance. If you're not musically inclined, you can do it as a group. But the idea is really to blend the theoretical doctrinal policy knowledge of intellectual property with a hands-on appreciation of what we're talking about when we talk about substantial similarity in music, for example. And you read about, for example, the Ed Sheeran case that's going on right now. Ed Sheeran is accused of having stolen Marvin Gaye's song, the first 24 seconds of Thinking Out Loud, line up with those from Let's Get It On. So how can a lawyer properly advise on this? How can a judge properly decide these cases? I think as we expand our repertoire, it's more likely that we can get it right. And I don't need to remind the patent folks in this room that many people were holding their breath when the Supreme Court was hearing the oral arguments in the Amgen versus Sanofi case. And they were trying to dabble in science, which to many seemed way out of their depth. Right? So at Wake Forest, Keith Robinson is having a program where law students partner with undergraduate students. They lawyer these undergraduate students who take the role of businesses. And so the undergraduates too get appreciation of what dealing with technology and law and patent lawyers would feel like. At Penn State, I would be remiss not to mention that we also have a Penn State Law Policy Engineering Initiative. And just this summer, we are starting a patent agent pipeline that's developed with a DC boutique firm, and some undergraduate students or graduate students can join synchronously by Zoom, and then they get to experience a day in the life of a patent agent. And really, this is to both familiarize them with the culture and what the career opportunities that come with patent law, but also to prepare them to interface with patent attorneys and patent agents down their career. And these types of broad-based thinkings are going to be particularly important when you interface with new technologies like AI. And you know, one of the articles that came out in the New York Times yesterday mentions how there is great alarm about how quickly AI is developing. People are exhorting us to put a step on the brakes. And the question that's put to these technologists is, how can you invest and how can you develop technology that you know is dangerous? And one response quotes Robert Oppenheimer, who led the US effort to build the atomic bomb. And Robert Oppenheimer said, quote, "When you see something that is technically sweet, you just go ahead and do it." So people are not thinking about the regulations behind what's going on. They're not thinking about the laws that find the right balance between innovation and other considerations. And it's really imperative on folks in the IT space to develop and broaden their repertoire so that we can meaningfully engage with people. It starts at schools, where people do that sort of thing. So in closing, I would say that, and I quote our friend Dan Brown here, where he says that the metric of innovation is comparative advantage. So what comparative advantage are we giving our students here in the United States? USIPA has developed an acronym. It's Unify, Simplify, Amplify, acrostic. So unify by doing programs together to educate more people. Simplify by making it easier for people to find your program. And amplify by helping to market each other's programs. So what we see at the IP Awareness Summit today, I think if it's a microcosm of what can be possible, we can be grateful, and sometimes gratitude can sustain hope. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And James, you're next.
Well, I hope all can hear me. I'm really sorry not to be there at Northwestern. I've never missed one of these CIPUs, but family obligations have me elsewhere. It is a privilege to work with Bruce and his team at the Center for Intellectual Property Understanding, and to join Rafael, Daryl, Tiffany, and Stephanie on this panel. I'm going to be very brief with my comments because I'm so interested in hearing from Tiffany and others. Generally speaking, business and engineering IP education programs should inform innovators and future leaders about the legal system that in some cases is constitutionally established to motivate inventors and authors to create a better future for us all. So it is a matter of agency. It is helpful for educators to enable these futures leaders with language that connects to what they already have learned elsewhere in the curriculum. This connecting language should help them see the advantages, comparative advantages, as Dan has stated, and the disadvantages of the IP system. And the critical thinking that exists at the nexus of these two is important to enable a leader. Just as all management disciplines create context, and they actually inform what should or should not be done by context, the relevance of IP as a business asset should be taught through the lens of context. Hence, there must be case studies, aggressive, complicated case studies that can be unpacked by the students. These should be contemporary. Each and every class session should begin by what was in the newspaper just this last week that plugs into what was discussed in the prior class. It's there. We just have to bring it to the surface for the students to understand. With the proper epistemology and pedagogy as embodied in the coursework that's been described by Daryl and Rafael before me, we can help future leaders bring Lincoln's fuel of interest to the fire of their genius. This is what the leaders do. They allocate resources in an efficient, meaningful way. This is one way to educate, and it has worked in multiple schools at Northwestern University where my coursework is taught. Dan, I think, teaches one of the courses that I created in the engineering school amongst the many others that he has created, for example. And, you know, we've exported this content all over the world through students and PhDs who've gone on to teach elsewhere. With respect to the courses that have been developed by Dan Brown, they really do aspire to enable business and engineering leaders of tomorrow to use the IP system to their advantage en route to advancing the common good. This is a very basic refrain that leaders can embrace and use to actually motivate all that are following them. And that's where I think IP as a tool can make a difference. So that's all I'll say. Thank you for the opportunity to be on this panel.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Tiffany, I think you've already shared with us just a little bit about how important this area, IP, has been to you and your partner. Can't wait to see now how you take this into the education space.
Yes, thank you, thank you. And you know, I really appreciate all the comments and information that was shared thus far from Rafael and Daryl and you, Stephanie and James. And I'm going to approach it from a different perspective. Some of what I just decided to pivot on the spot, hearing everyone, because you know I want to add to what you said versus just repeating it, which is that we are in one of the coolest areas of business that you can be in. We're in innovation, which in of itself is what I like to call practical creativity, right? So we are in a creative space similar to film and music, as you brought up, that is part of the industry that deals with intellectual property as well, because we are creative, whether we're writing the next book, or in my case, the first patent was for the first one-strap backpack. I think it's important for us as we're looking at educating the future IP leaders, to remember that not everything is about high tech or life sciences. At the end of the day, we are in the business of imagination being taken seriously. And we should use those types of terms and that type of language when we're going out to educate not only students, but the general public. The students could end up being our front line as they go home and talk to their parents about it. They're not going to go home and talk to their parents about it if they are stumbling over the words and trying to remember even what they learn, or they think their parents won't understand it. So first off, I'll say for Tibetan, which is the EdTech company that I have, that I literally started because I've been a lifelong innovator since I was a teenager. This has been my personal passion as well as my career path. I started because I felt that we were missing the mark with regards to connecting imagination and creativity to innovation and invention. And our tagline is the science of turning imagination into reality. And we teach the innovators and the entrepreneurs' mindsets and skill sets to everyone. We believe in human potential from cradle to grave, not just that sweet spot in the middle. So last year, the youngest group of students that we worked with were fourth graders. They were 10-year-olds. I usually, when I'm teaching to the general population, innovation or imagination, I start with my story, then the method, our Tibetan method, and then we typically end with, okay, now you see my backpack. You see, for example, in this particular case, it was patented. Patents are just pictures and paragraphs. So we're going to go back into our classrooms, and I want you to innovate something that you've been curious about innovating or that you want to innovate, and they'll do that as 10-year-olds. They'll draw the pictures, they'll have the story, and then I ask them to present it for those that want to stand up and present it. When I did the 10-year-olds last year, I was expecting very simple stuff. They had augmented reality simulators. One had a wireless battery charger that they didn't know existed, in the real world. One had created the equivalent of an American Girl collection of like universe building with all these characters, not necessarily dolls, that had tech embedded in it, like it was IoT, so then also you could link it to an app and 10-year-olds. Then in March, I went into a retirement facility, and the audience ranged from late 70s to Ian, who was 102, and did the same thing, teaching them innovation, because where we're really going to win as a country and society, and especially us, where we want to expand IP rights, is when everyone in society feels connected to what we're doing. And that we bring the coolness to it, like entertainment and sports. Someone was mentioning that I have a show that I do called Sexy Black Genius, where I'm bringing the coolness to it. So where I want to end up, before I hand it back, is to show some of the creative ways that we can be teaching innovation and invention and getting people connected to it. Because when we're teaching it, even when we're meeting on it like this, we should be creative and innovative when we're doing it, if we want people to get into the space, right? Now I'm going to end with a poem. Some of you heard it last year when I did the keynote. This poem is called Hermione Rising. It's dedicated to Hermione Granger of Harry Potter, our hero, right, in innovation, because most of us are told that we're muggles, when really we have all this magic in the form of our inventions and innovation within us. So, just quickly, I'm going to perform on the spot Hermione Rising. I imagine a better way, something disruptive and innovative, used and revered, demanded and paid for, something transformative. Imagination, why do we deny it or discount it? It's the source of all innovation. Einstein was theoretical, not applied. Da Vinci, an artist and a scientist. George Washington Carver, no vision, no hope. And Harriet? Well, Harriet had to have imagined freedom before she took the first step. I have a dream of traveling to space, of curing cancer, of running for office, of peace, unity, equality, and equity. You get what I'm saying? It's not about the how, it's about the why, the sense of purpose. No need to teach imagination, just endorse it. And with grace, give space for it. It's not to be packed away. It should be on display in schools and offices and awareness summits, right, Bruce? A priority among the others. Serious vote for tinkering and sketching and making and for play. Forcing memorization of someone else's prior imagination is not the way. The recipe gives space to extend and expand a concept through empathy and understanding, through diversity and collaboration, and embrace for imagination in the case of them all. The more minds that imagine together, the more innovation blossoms. The more diverse those minds, the taller it grows. And if it's fueled by love and understanding, it thrives and soars. We are 8 billion strong, brothers and sisters. We can do anything unless we fight each other. Go human or go home. My fellow dreamers, you are our future game changers. Your place is at the top of the class. Take out your wand and cast the spell of I want that. It's okay if it's messy. Innovation and invention will always be messy. Practice, experiment, rehearse, try, screw up, and then rise up. Wield the magic of hope and faith. And know that the world may attack your genius now, but love you for it later. Hermione is rising and her power is limitless, and so is yours. I pray, like her, we will all use it for the greater good. God believes in us. Please, let's always believe in each other and ourselves. Thank you.
Well done. See, we saved the best for last here. This was
And
great.
that's copyrighted.
Okay, folks, we want to hear your questions. So what questions do you have for our speakers today? Anyone have questions? While you're thinking of your question, I'll put in a plug. A number of my colleagues got together. Together we created a paper on invention education framework. We put it out there. And I'm pleased to say that in November of 2022, the Interagency Working Group of the Committee on STEM for the National Science and Technology Council put out this guide for convergence education, transdisciplinary STEM studies, to guide the next version of the federal STEM education plan. The current plan for federal STEM education for K-14 education ends in 23. And in this guide that's just been released, they call out invention education as an approach, very promising approach for teaching transdisciplinary STEM. So for us to even be mentioned at the federal policy level is a major accomplishment of our field. And I think convenings like this, if we all pull together, we're going to make even more advancement. So I'm pretty excited about it. So any other questions?
I have a, go ahead. Let me ask a quick question, and Chinwe, we'll go over to you. How much IP education is enough? That's my question. You know, for lawyers, it's one thing. For entrepreneurs, it's another. For copyright content creators, it's another. For inventors, it's another. And even brand folks. How much is enough? I'd like to go around the panel and just hear what they think is sufficient for a startup kind of information session.
Yeah, James, I want to make sure you get in on this action. Would you like to start first, and then we'll come to Tiffany and come on down this row?
Sure. Can you hear me? You can hear me? Great. So,
Yes.
Bruce, at Northwestern, we have a program that's between the Kellogg School and the Engineering School. And this very select group of 75 students starts their entire degree program with my course. It's the first course that they get. You begin, and they get an entire quarter course, which is 30 contact hours of IP, but we use the beautiful language that Tiffany is expanding, imagination and all of that. We're trying to introduce it in a way for that group that is foundational. With everyone else, we got to sort of shoehorn it in where the curriculum will make it work.
For me, I feel that practical creativity or innovation, or whatever you call it, of which, intellectual property falls within, like the practical creativity is the why, right? And then you want to protect all that you've created that's impacting the world. I think it should be part of a core curriculum and what we're learning, a literacy, like what we're seeing in Korea. I spent time with KIPO when I was in Switzerland a few days ago, and they really are on the forefront of it. And that is my dream, that we are teaching this innovation and entrepreneurship literacy and those skill sets to be used in everyday life or to start companies with, et cetera, because if you think about all that's being automated by machine, which I love, I'm a techie, the one thing that will never be able to be automated is human creativity. So where we went from the ag age to the industrial age to the creative age now, of which this new tech like generative AI and other stuff and is in service to some sort of primary human creative. I think if we want to be successful as a general society in that future, it needs to be the way similar to what we did with reading and writing when we were going from ag to industrial age. There's the profession of it, and then there's the skills and mindsets of it. And if we were to ask now who in society needs to be literate, we would say everyone, right, to be competitive. Who in society needs to be innovative in the future? I think everyone does.
Thanks. That's actually a great segue. So I'll put a comma on that, and I would add to what Tiffany has so eloquently said, and analogize it to public health. All of us just went through a pandemic. We all had to learn or relearn what it meant to wash our hands, to make sure that we dispose of tissue that we use, to mask up, and so on. And it's not a question of whether, but when, how, and how do you effectively get that message out? You see in the pandemic that it's a life or death issue, but in many ways, as you've heard from many speakers today, it's the life or death of a nation. It's life or death of comparative advantage. It is whether or not, as a society living in a knowledge economy, we are, to use Tiffany's words, literate about what we need to know. Because if you are content with being a rank and file paper pusher, there are any number of machines that can do that faster, cheaper, and more efficiently than you. And whether we are talking about a geopolitical race or whether we are talking about just the betterment of individual groups or states or a society, intellectual property is at the heart of it. And look at where we were until, say, the Industrial Revolution and how quickly we've moved since then. There are any number of studies that recommend to you a book called The Battle over Patents, where that traces the impact that's studied both rigorously, geographically, historically, empirically, about the value and the impact that patents has had on the development of modern society as we know it. So it's not a luxury, it is a necessity. How much? Well, we start from K to 12, maybe even younger these days, and we don't stop until we're 102 at least. That's when you might qualify to take a break at 102.
And for me, the aspiration is, I think, that to leave a level of literacy that will make them competent. At the college where I teach, roughly 50% of our students will never pursue any more education beyond the 2-year degree. So those students are of particular interest to me because I know that this is the last chance they'll have to learn anything related to business. Their aspiration is to learn a skill, join the community, the workforce, and become employed, get a paycheck, and make a life for themselves. So for those students, my aspiration is that when they see an article on a newspaper or hear the acronym IP, that it'll mean something to them, because we're dealing with communities of students that have never, ever heard anything about IP education. So for those students, that's my legacy, and that's what I hope that it'll live in their mind. For the other half, those students that are looking to transfer to four-year schools, whose aspirations are to join the ranks of people that will invent a patent, who will create a company, sell it, and become wealthy off of it. For those students, my aspiration is that they will continue on their path. And so the answer to your question, Bruce, would be I don't think that there is enough. I think that if anything, there should be the beginning of a path for them to continue on to pursue IP until their boundary ends. So that's my answer to that.
Okay, I'll just add one last thing on the time, and then we'll switch over. So time really matters. I really want to write about this. For our young inventors in the early years who are participating in those invention conventions, it takes at least 40 hours worth of work with them to come up with something, even if it's paper, cardboard kind of to put up. But so they have to create something first, and then that protection really matters. Then they want to learn the protection part because they have something they really care about. The inspirational prototype also at the community college level in the programming we've done, it's taken a minimum of 40 hours to get them out into the community, finding that good problem, doing the research to find the novel layer, and coming up with a way to present something just very inspirational. 40 hours can't do any less. And then for the inventions that the high school students have done where they've earned a patent, they spend 200 hours. So as we try to work this into the public school system and in the community college system, our challenge has been, where do we pick up 200 hours? What do you give up in the school day to get this inside? And so the latest thing we're trying, community college level, if you look at it, a community college course is 54 hours of in-class time and 104 hours of homework. So we want to flip that. Put 104 hours of face time in a community college course, block and roll in 2 courses, take those 100 hours per semester, have that be a heavy-duty project with IP protection, and pay the students for the extra 50 hours of in-class time. Make it worth their while to come up with something real. And turns out there's federal work-study dollars that are available to pay those hours. So slowly but surely, we're figuring it out. So, Chenwei.
Thank you for all of the contributions. I think this is a really, really interesting area because you can't even have a discussion on sort of the higher level pieces of IP if you don't have the fundamental conversation on awareness and education. And the work that you're all doing in various, spaces is so incredible. Obviously time consuming and in some ways a labor of love. No one can pay you enough to sort of do this work. And so this kind of leads me to my question, which is, it's very easy to operate in silos, especially when you're dealing with a space like IP where so much focus is on commercial, the sort of the commercial implications and not necessarily this early stage. So when you're thinking in your various capacities on how to partner and who to partner with and what effective partnership looks like, what are some of the things that you're thinking about? How are you approaching it? And what are some of the things that maybe recommendations you might make for those of us in the room who are looking, to say, I have X amount of hours, I have X amount of dollars, I have, this network, this community. Where do I plug in to be the most helpful and supportive, and also avoid the silo effect or redundancies, because you don't want to lose a lot of the effort that everyone has and sort of the passion to drive this. And so if you can really create a multiplier effect, how do we do that?
I can say that I've been, focused on that currently. Thank you for the question, because at first, I'm not a teacher by trade. So when I was first doing it, it felt it really important for me personally to engage with the audience. I started with fellow founders because even fellow tech founders don't have as much experience with those mindsets and skill sets of the founder and the innovator. They just figured it out as they went along, and then I expanded out. As now that I've done probably about 1 million if you consider the streaming, and then almost 100,000 live audience, I feel confident enough that the curriculum is understandable and that it can scale. And so that's what my focus is right now, is having more of the curriculum be self-guided. And we're very content-driven. We use music, we use animation, we use live performance pieces like Hermione Rising, as well as other things to engage people with the idea that now we have all this live feedback of which content really resonates. You know, my inspiration was Schoolhouse Rocks from when I was a kid, because I was like, it should be that cool like that, but, you know, my own modern spin. And you know, I've been looking at partners to scale because I'm small tech. And one of the partners, when I was gravitating, I was like, I want someone else that's in the innovation space. You know, I want partners that I can do some things with and see, do we work together well? I want them to have a global reach because I'm 55 countries. You know, as I mentioned, you know, I'm like, this is a layover basically from my trip back from Latvia and Switzerland en route to DC. So that was important. So there was just all these like sort of criteria that I had, and where I've ended up right now is with Qualcomm. So I've been collaborating a lot with Qualcomm on a variety of different levels on this to help scale. And it can range from us collaborating, going into the schools together, to they had me do a fireside chat with their general counsel a couple of months ago, so that also, you know, their 45,000 employees could see a different innovation experience. And then we're looking at other ways to do things together. I also, I'm starting to archive my stories. So with that, I did the Inventors Patent Academy, and they came out and archived my story versus just archiving it with myself. I'm working with WIPO more. So for me, I just, you know, went through all these criteria that I had of what the goals are for what we're doing with Tibetan, which is, you know, teaching everyone to take their imagination seriously and how simple ways to bring it into reality, and finding groups that aligned with that. One thing I'll say quickly with the Inventors Patent Academy, because they flew out from California and spent maybe 7 hours recording my story. And so also in that, there'll be like a lot of educational clips that will come out of it. But I had them recorded at Howard University, and I invited any students that were interested that they could sit in the room, but they had to be extra quiet while the filming was going on. I also made a point to highlight Patricia Bath, who's one of my favorite inventors, and she had been at Howard Med School, 5 patents around laser cataract surgery. So a lot of us are able to see longer because of her, a Black woman. So I give that as an example of ways that there are so many different elements when we're doing collaborations that we can use it as opportunities to not only educate more people, but bring more people into our tribe. So it's like, oh, let me film at Howard versus my office. Let me invite students. Let me also, in my story, shout out her story. And all of those connection points while you're educating people, anchor what you're teaching them, because even though we're in the space of invention and innovation, and we were, you know, focused on a lot of the science aspect. Oh yeah, sorry. We always have to remember the human connection.
So with that, I just want to say thank you to my panel. Thank you to all of you. I think I can speak for all of us in saying we're a very collaborative crowd. So if anybody's interested in our world, I know we'd love to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.